Hello and welcome. This video will cover submitting extension requests in Grants Online. If you require a further grant of aid for a matter where a grant has already been made, you can lodge an extension application. This process is known as applying for an extension of aid. You can lodge an extension application when previous applications or extensions have been submitted and processed by Legal Aid New South Wales. You would lodge an application for an extension of aid if you required more funding than that which is available on the existing invoices that have been generated on the file. After you lodge the extension application in Grants Online, it will be assessed by the Legal Aid New South Wales Grants Division, and a notification letter will be sent to the inbox section of your Grants Online account. So the inbox acts like an email account between yourself and Legal Aid New South Wales. So you'll receive the notification letter into your inbox, and you'll also receive an email that will be sent to your work email, just advising you that the notification has been received in your Grants Online inbox. Any outstanding invoices can be submitted after you've completed the work for that particular extension. To apply for an extension of aid, the first step is to click on the extension link in the Grants Online toolbar. After we've clicked on this link, we need to search for the file that we want to apply for an extension for. Whenever you're searching for file numbers in Grants Online, it's best to search using minimal search criteria. The more information that you enter into the search fields, the more chance you have of accidentally excluding the result that you want. In this case, I'm going to search only using the Legal Aid file ID number. I enter that file ID number into the File ID field and then click on Search, and that's going to bring back that file number into the search results that we have here. So we can see that that file ID number in the search results is a link. So we click on that to access the extension process for this file. We're now prompted to choose the application template for this extension request. It's really important that you choose the correct template for your matter, because the template type is going to affect what questions you're asked during the application process and ultimately what grant you'll be able to request. In this instance, I'm going to choose the Children and/or Property and Maintenance extension, but please be aware that you must ensure you're choosing the correct template type for your extension or matter. After we choose the template, we're taken into the extension application form. Completing the extension application form is the same process as completing a new application form, except a lot of the information is retained from the previous application and doesn't need to be re-entered. You will need to update information if the client's details have changed, and you'll also be prompted to enter new information where it's required by Legal Aid New South Wales in order to assess the extension request. If you try to move on from a section before completing all the compulsory fields, then just like in the original application form, an error message will pop up. This error message is advising that some compulsory information has not been entered. This information is going to need to be entered before you can submit the extension request. If you click on OK, you can continue with the rest of the request, save it, and then come back later and enter the missing information and submit the extension. I want to enter the compulsory information now. Click on Cancel, and you can see up at the top in red it displays what information needs to be entered. In this instance, it's the Centrelink check authorization, which is part of the applicant details section, and it's in the additional details tab of this section. So once I've completed that Centrelink check information, if I hit next, I'm going to successfully move on to the next screen. The next section is the matter and court details section. This section is going to need to be completed each time you submit an extension request, even if this information is unchanged from the previous application or extension. The court details that you enter in this section are going to determine what grants you can choose later on in the application. So it's important that you enter the correct information in the matter and court details section each time you submit an extension or application. After the matter and court details, we're taken through to the means test outcome screen. In an extension, you don't need to seek discretion regarding means eligibility or client contribution unless the client's circumstances have changed. If the circumstances haven't changed, then the information entered in the previous application or extension will still be current, and you can just click on Next to move on to the next section without having to enter any information in the means test outcome screen. The other party details, again, information is retained from the previous application or extension. So unless the circumstances have changed, you don't need to add anything. You can just hit next and move on to the next section. Next section is matter-specific details. In this instance, family law details. Again, this information doesn't need to be updated unless some circumstances have changed. In this particular application, it's family law details, but when you're completing a criminal or civil law extension, the same concept applies. Unless the circumstances have changed since the last application or extension, then this information won't need to be amended, so you can just click on Next to move through to the next screen. Next section is prompting me to provide more information about how this extension request meets the Legal Aid New South Wales policies and guidelines. In this instance, the questions relate to family law matters, but in criminal or civil law applications, while the questions would obviously be different, the concept would be the same. So you'd be getting questions that are focused on obtaining information about how this extension request meets the Legal Aid New South Wales policies and guidelines. The checklist solicitor fees screen will need to be completed for every application and for every extension request that you submit. It's in this screen that you request the specific grants of aid that you require to cover your fees. The options that are available are going to be determined by the template you've chosen and also the information that you entered in the matter and court details screen. So it's important that the correct template's chosen and the correct information is entered in the matter and court details screen to make sure you get the right options at this section. You tick the box next to the appropriate grant to request it. There is a free text field that you can use as well down at the bottom of the screen, but be aware that if you do use that free text field, this may slow down the processing of your grant. We click on Next to move to the next section, which is the checklist disbursements screen. Again, this will need to be completed for every application and extension request that you submit. It's in this screen that you request grants to cover the disbursements and expenses you've incurred in the matter or you will incur, and again you tick the box next to the appropriate grant. There's a free text field that you can use at the bottom of the screen, but please be aware that this may slow down the processing of your extension request. So we click on Next to move through to the next section again, which is the scope of work. This is the summary of what funding you've requested in this extension request. You may be prompted to clarify some grants with a specific number of units. So for example, you may be prompted to say how many hours of preparation you require or how many days at court. To move on from the scope of work, we click on Next. It'll take us through to the next section. The applicant declaration will need to be completed for each application and extension request. You need to state whether any legal fees have been paid by the applicant or on their behalf, and provide the date that the applicant completed the Legal Aid New South Wales application form. The practitioner certification section will also need to be completed for each application and for each extension request you submit. In this section, you're certifying that the extension request meets the Legal Aid New South Wales policies and guidelines, specifically the merit outcome, the guidelines outcome. Your name should be automatically entered into the practitioner section. If you need to search for a practitioner name, you use the magnifying glass icon and to open up a practitioner search screen. You need to enter the date that you're submitting the application request and your practitioner's reference if applicable. Once this is completed, we click on Next. We're now at the Submit section of the extension request. Please remember that you can save the application request at any time by clicking on this Save button up the top here. Also, remember that the extension request is going to automatically save whenever you successfully click on Next and move through to a section. To access a saved application, you click on the View and Edit link in the Application section of the Grants Online toolbar. When you're ready to submit the application, click on the Submit button. You can add supporting documents to the application using this screen here. If you want to attach a supporting document, show the file upload area, browse for the particular document, and then upload the file. Just